Okay, so this is a case analysis of the case entitled Recruiting Faster, Part A, Process Innovation with SDL. So basically this case revolves around one of the mandates that were given by Ganesh Purandre, the head of Financial Services Business Unit at SDL, which was a software development company, to Mohua Sen, who's the head of recruitment for the division, for the financial division. So for SDL, each lateral hire was done against a billable opportunity, right? Each hiring that was done from one department to another. So hence timely or early fulfillment was not only critical to ensure that the project's deliverables happened, but also because of the immediate billability questions. So it is universally, albeit reluctantly accepted, that the paradigm accepted paradigm of recruitment cycle in India, which is where this case is actually focused on, is around 3 months. Of which the notice period is served by the selected candidate is normally 2 to 3 months in itself. So in this scenario, the mandate to shrink the cycle time seems like a Herculean task. It's very hard to do, to reduce the 3-month cycle time in order to fill a position. Mohua Sen examines the entire process timeline and considers the feasibility of reducing the recruitment time to a lesser time period. The business principles of business process reengineering need to be used to understand this better. So to understand how the process cycle time was reduced and how to recommend different solutions. Now, generally speaking, this particular case study has several questions like every other case study, and we need to look at those questions to better understand the case. So the first question is, what is the financial impact on SDL of reducing the recruitment cycle time? Is Ganesh's demand justified, and what is the impact of a reduced cycle time on the recruiter's productivity? So the revenue growth of IT service companies in India actually shows a strong correlation with the increase in their headcount. So the more people there are, the more they're able to produce and to do their work. The analysis of the average process times that is shown in Exhibit 1 of the case itself shows that there are 2 separate bottlenecks in the systems, which are the wait time for technical interviews and the post-offer joining time. That is the notice period of the candidate. The second is, of course, beyond the control of the recruitment team or the scope of the process improvement, since obviously candidates must serve their notice periods at the organization that they're already in to then finally join this one. So, however, reducing the recruitment cycle time has huge revenue implications, which are basically discussed, a little later. So, the cost of recruitment delays can be understood in this way: the opportunity cost of waiting for a resource. So, since the lateral recruitment process hinges on the assumption that each hire is against a billable opportunity and not for bench, so they actually they are being hired to do the job immediately. They're not just there just for the heck of it. So there is a clear opportunity to increase the revenues as soon as we get the person on board, right? That's what is meant by billable opportunity. So in other words, we have something that we can bill a customer for, and we need to hire a person to achieve that particular requirement, and we'll get some money off of it. Okay, so in 2009, engineers contributed average revenues of about $25 per hour or $200 per day at an exchange rate of US dollars being equivalent to 50 Indian rupees. Now, assuming a profitability of about 30% revenues, the profitability lost to a company for a day's delay was $60 per hire. So as you can see in Exhibit 2 that is mentioned in the case, the recruitment process takes an average of 49.38 days, excluding the notice period that they have to give to that organization where they are already employed. So 49.38 days, the process related time is in itself is 7.08 days, and the remaining 42.3 days are wait time. So total cost, or rather the profitability loss that you will have of wait time per day is around $2,538 per day. So the cost advantage of reducing the delay by 10 days is actually pretty high, right? It would be somewhere around $600 per candidate hired, right? And if you were to consider an average lateral recruitment to be 10,000 hires per year, the potential additional profit for a 10-day reduction in the recruitment cycle would mean $600,000 US dollars per year. That's a lot. So Ganesh was actually certainly justified in making this request of reducing the cycle time to actually get to recruit a new person for a billable opportunity, or in other words, for a particular project that they would be put on to work against immediately. So as the process or improvement would increase this profitability, it makes perfect sense. Okay, so in order to understand the impact on the recruiter's productivity, we need to look at certain things. So we need to assume a stable system. The system's throughput is about 152.66 requests per month, right? So that is actually mentioned in Exhibit 2 of the case. Since the bottleneck is the technical interviews wait and process time, because that needs to be taken before we could actually hire someone. An average of 24.7 days, that's mentioned in Exhibit 2. The system's flow time is about 24.7 days, also mentioned on page number 5 of Case A. So if we were to keep that in mind, if we would actually get these numbers, we'd be like the flow rate, which is 152.66 requests per month, which is around 5.088 requests per day. Flow time being 24.7 days, the inventory being 125.67 requests. At any given time, there are, in other words, 125 requests at different processing stages within the system that the HR is trying to handle. So given a request to candidate ratio of 1.5, this means that there are 187.5 candidates held up in the system that need to be looked at. So if the flow time can be cut by 10 days to 14.7 days, this inventory of waiting candidates would be reduced to 75 requests and 112 candidates in the system. So you would have lesser, if you were to reduce the time, you would have lesser requests to handle and you will have lesser candidates to deal with. In other words, in simple words, right? So with recruiter productivity expected to be 20 hires per quarter, an offer to join ratio of 1.2:1 would mean that each recruiter would have to make 24 offers per quarter, right? So they would have to deal and handle with and find 24 potential candidates. So this would bring the pressure on the recruiter down. They would need to be much more productive. So Exhibit 3 actually indicates that the service variability can be seen across different quarters, and this is usually because of the variation in the technical interview times. See, once you analyze the flow times for various quarters, that actually indicate a direct relation between the demands and the shorter cycle times. That's also mentioned in the case. You will realize that there is a lot more higher demand. There's a lot more efficiency during those times when there's a higher demand. So there are a lot more applicants, right? So business units in those times, business units are themselves trying to be more helpful to the HR and are making sure that the technical interviews are taken on time. That is also something that needs to be considered. Anyways, the technical interview times across all business units seem to be pretty much the same. It would take the same amount of time. In quarter 4, the deterioration in technical interview times across most business units can be correlated with the candidates that are being handled. So during quarter 4, which is the end of the year, most of those technical staff are usually busy with other projects. So they are unable to take those interviews during those times. So that's also another problem that is present. Anyways, so the approach that should be therefore be to reduce the process time, as this would give you the most benefit. So there is actually a whole chart that you could actually you could see in the case, and you could actually create based on the technical interview time in days. So for different departments it's different, but what is generally can be seen is that during quarter 4 the various departments tended to take a lot longer with respect to how much time was taken to actually process a particular candidate. So it was pretty clear in that quarter 1 was pretty difficult. Quarter 4 was very difficult for getting the appropriate time for the technical interviews, while quarter 2 and 3 were better times to do so. So the second question, which is the availability of historical recruitment data, what is the availability of that in order to make better predictions, and what are the challenges in predicting the demand and recruiting requirements proactively instead of actually reactively. So with it, if you had rich historical data available about the skills that you require, the experience levels you require, and the numbers recruited, the forecasting could be a lot better. You could anticipate it and you could be a lot better. The hiring of 50% of the forecasted demand would be actually improve the overall process. So this could be done in 3 different ways. You could divide the requirements. You would need to know the business requirements of each of the business units. You need to do resource planning and then understand it through an ABC analysis. So A skill would be 5% of skills account for 75% of requirements. B skills will be like 10% of skills account for 15% of the requirements, and in the C skill we will have 85% of skills account for the 10% requirements. So based on this we'll break it down. In other words, we know that 5% of the skills actually account for most of our requirements. So those need to be present in any candidate. There are 10% of such skills that are required only in 15% of the situation, and there are 85% of skills that are required only in 10% of the scenarios. So keeping such numbers in view, they'll be able to. So this ABC analysis that I just talked about is very simple, very similar to the Pareto rule of 2080. Right, 20% of investor input accounts for 80% of the results obtained. So based on this, there are 5% of skills that need to be that actually handle most of the requirements required. So we can make a more proactive, job profile or rather a job posting based on those usual requirements. So you could do a proactive pre-processing. The recruitment team actually can do that with respect to candidates that they are starting to look at before the need actually arises. So one approach for each of these departments would be to estimate 50% of the regular demand, the standard popular skills for each of the business units, which are different units. The units are based on the data warehousing enterprise, data warehousing, financial BU, ERP solutions, finance solution, all of those. So based on those, you could actually have that. And they would start collecting various documents and start screening them and reach all the way till the interview stage. So this would actually help reduce the cycle time by about 31%. So they would change the entire process, interview pre-processing, based on this. They would take about 7 days for sourcing funnel. They would wait for a technical interview for 24.7 days, and they would then be waiting for about 0.04 days for technical interview, wait for the HR interview for 6.2 days, and for 0.02 days for the HR interview itself, right? But now it would be reduced, and they would be able to do it a lot faster. They would have this request going on. They would wait for different documents and those requests will be generated based on forecasting of the kind of skills that they need in their candidates. And they would wait for the documents. They would get the hard copy, of the documents. They would then have the technical interview being taken, and they would wait for the joining. Of course, they will have to wait because those candidates would already be working elsewhere, and they'll be serving the notice period, and then they will finally join. So that would reduce the entire process time and the cycle time quite a bit. However, there are some challenges to this process. The recruitment team would have had a lot of trouble getting the technical panels to cooperate in the recruitment activity, even with having these details of those skills. Pre-processing and completion of all the selection process actually requires a lot of technical support and cooperation from those technical staffs who will be the ones actually working with these people. They will need that. An additional reluctance that also needs to be addressed is the pre-processing. There is no guarantee that the selected candidate would be joining the project team of the specific technical panel. There is no guarantee that the project would actually come along for which this person was hired. So that too is an issue. Recruiters may be reluctant to invest any effort in any uncertain demands with no guarantees of any projects coming in that they could actually put in. So recruitment performance is actually measured based on the offers and joinees. So they may not be willing to invest that much effort when they're not even sure whether whoever is being offered that job would actually be hired and would actually be useful, right? So they may not put in the required effort. So finally, in the event that no such requests are being made, the company must also consider, or actually joining in, the company must also consider the impact that it has on their image. I mean, candidates would become really pissed off when they realize that they were given an offer but they went through all the entire process of interviews and tests and everything, and they were not actually given a joining letter because no job actually came up, right? So they'd be very angry, based on that. So that too is an issue. So there are lots of frameworks that are available for process enablers. One of them is very famous. That's actually presented. That could be searched for, and that is that business processes that the enablers for business processes are workflow design, and then the information systems, the motivation and its measurement, reward punishment systems of employees, human resource management, policies and rules, and various other facilities. Now all of these things together are different enablers for making any process happen. Question number 3 is how should MoveAscend reduce the recruitment cycle time, right? So the solution to reducing the cycle time was what was actually done is that there are multiple approaches to reducing cycle time. One of them is to, of course, move non-critical activities out of the critical path. That's the best way, right? So any unnecessary steps should be thrown out of the business process. Some ways to reduce cycle time and the associated challenges are: you could reduce the document collection time by initiating the collection at the sourcing level. So since many of those documents can be scanned and filled out and online and submitted before the HR interview, collecting them in this online manner would be better for the HR interview and whether or not if they want to give an offer. The challenge here is to address the reluctance of candidates to actually give those reports, give those details straight away. So if the candidates are reluctant to bring this documentation to the technical interview, then how would you convince them for it? So how would you convince them to actually fill this up before they actually apply? That would be the hard part. The conditional offer email could be sent to candidates after the background check is done and verification forms are sent. This could so basically the initiation of the background verification would happen earlier on. So this would require a small change in the online tool which they already have, which is doable, right? So they could instead, there would still be an online, lengthy online process, because obviously now they'll be filling in not just the application form but also filling in information that is going to be used for their background checks. So they may not like doing that. Candidates could also be asked to collect all the documents before the technical interview. The documents could then actually be submitted. If the candidate passes the technical interview, they could be taken in. This would still be considered difficult to enforce because candidates do not really want to do this. They don't want to bring in all the required documents, and obviously this would be very difficult, especially in a job market which is already very competitive, and candidates may just go to some other organization. As many documents as possible could be collected online. Maybe that could be done. Application form, background verification form, stuff like that. The others could be scanned and they could be taken in before the HR interview happens. The difficulty again is the same, is that candidates would not want to fill this up. They would not want to bring in so many documents with them, and they would have to then and the candidates would have to actually fill them in for the HR interview to happen. This again would cause a lot of problems. A way to reduce the offer time across different divisions could be to share recruiters across divisions. So if any division has a low hiring demand, then maybe the recruiters in that division or for that division could be moved to another department where the demand is higher, and they could work for that particular department. So that is also one possibility. And any kind of performer who's not doing well could then be sent back to the less demanding departments instead. That could also speed up. So in other words, move your better recruiters in areas where their demand is higher. So pre-processing of any kind of recruitment activities, as we've already discussed, would reduce the time by collecting all that data beforehand, before the technical interview happens, and to do it during the second and the third quarters instead of doing it in the first and the fourth quarters. So this is also another reason through which this could be done. So these are some suggestions. Obviously they're feasible, and the actual fun is in the implementation, and that would be the hard part. And would be hard to do. So the peak quarters, as I already mentioned, are quarter 1 and 2 and quarter 4, and we need to make sure that no hiring is done during that time and more data is collected during that time. So that would actually save you a lot of time. So this entire case is all about trying to reduce any kind of steps, or to try and do those steps in a different manner, or to do them earlier on. That would slow down the entire process. So if we were to remove unnecessary steps in a business process, it actually usually improves its efficiency. This is essentially what this entire case is about. So I hope you get the basic gist of it, and this can actually be done much better if you were to use HRISs such as Orange HRM, IJCSM, Centrifugo, Web HR. These are some of the more open source cheaper ones. Or if you were to go for such as SAP, Human Capital Management, Oracle Human Capital Management, or Microsoft Dynamics Human Capital Management solutions. They are designed to save you time by actually collecting all of this data through online platforms, screening it already, and then keeping that data available for any kind of interviews. Plus, since it's already in the system, you could actually align the technical interviews according to their availability. So that helps you keep a better track of your progress instead of actually doing it in the manner that they were doing it in SDL's case. So yeah, that's basically the solution. Hope you are able to understand this better.